It says that we're going live, and hey, there we are. We are live on the YouTubes for the February 2022 Westlake Charter School Board meeting. Board President Golick, you have the YouTubes.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Ike. So tonight we're meeting pursuant to Government Code Section 54953, subsection E, subsection 1, which authorizes local legislative bodies to hold public meetings via teleconference and to make public meetings accessible telephonically or otherwise electronically to all members of the public. We encourage everyone watching tonight to participate. There are instructions at the end of the agenda that you can be used to join, including links and ways to email. If you decide to email, please send that to admin@westlakecharter.com. In the subject line, put the item which you want to comment on, and please keep that to 250 words. We'll make every effort to read that into the meeting tonight, but if by chance it's not read, don't worry, it will be included as part of the minutes and circulated to board members. With that said, given our current plan right now, I'll just go ahead and do it at the front, John, is to let everybody know that we do plan on meeting in person for all committees and the board in March. So please mark your calendars now and plan to be on campus. It's going to be a great time to come back together. But those out there watching who have gotten used to accessing the board's work in this way, we do have a plan in place in order to make sure you can still watch from home and you can still participate in our meetings. And so it's going to be another iteration of what we've been doing all along to make sure that the community has a way to participate.
Now, Hope, would you mind unpacking the reason for that? I mean, did we flip a coin? Was like, hey, March, that sounds great. How did we get here? What rule are we adhering to?
Sure. So for the months of January and February, Sacramento County did have an order in place that was worded in a way that prevented meetings from being held in public. And so you saw Natomas Unified School District and other boards in Sacramento County return to or stay in an online format with different orders that will no longer be in effect as of midnight, 11:59 p.m. on the 15th of February. It seems like now is the right time to begin to take those next steps of returning in person. Now, I should have included the caveat at the beginning in that if any orders are released by CDPH or Sacramento County that would prohibit us from meeting in person, we will certainly be following those orders as we have the entire time over the last 2 years. There is indications that the state will have a statewide endemic plan by next Monday. So there's a lot of moving parts still. So who knows? It's our best hope that we can come together in March. But like everything else we've been dealing with over the last 2 years, it's subject to change based on the orders and other guidance that we receive from Sacramento County, California Department of Public Health, and the governor's office.
Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate it.
No problem. With that, Amy, would you please take the roll?
Sure thing. Hope?
Here.
Sean?
Here.
Oh. Josh?
Here.
Michelle?
Here.
Jamie?
Here.
Lila?
Here.
Shannon?
Here.
And Jed.
Thank you, Amy. That will bring us to celebrations. I'm just going to go in alphabetical order today. So Sean and then Josh.
I will do the same one that I did in governance because I think that it needs to be said, although it is not really school related, which is I will celebrate emergency veterinarians who are staffing 24-hour clinics and helping people with their after hours or sometimes even during hours emergencies. It's a rough time in veterinary medicine, and I needed to take advantage of a 24-hour clinic in the middle of the night last night, and I really appreciated their being there, no matter what the wait was that I had to do.
Thanks, Sean. And just to ensure people to let people know who are watching, your cat is fine. right? And so for everyone out there who might be wondering, don't worry. Sean, also being a veterinarian, has things under control. Josh and then Michelle.
Yeah, thanks, Hope. I want to celebrate the news you just presented, that we might be getting back together again with the committees and the board starting in March. That's awesome. I look forward to it.
Thanks, Josh. It's going to be interesting, right? Getting dressed again? No, I'm joking. Of course, we're all dressed and leaving the house already. Michelle and then Janie.
Yeah, I'll just celebrate kindness. I think with everything that's going on, the moments where folks are even, just kind to one another, agreeing to disagree or disagreeing respectfully, it's always great. So I just want to celebrate that moment.
Thanks, Michelle. Janie and then Lila.
I want to celebrate outdoor spaces at Westlake where we can learn. And I have like an awesome corner where my classroom is, where I have all the outdoor space and all the tables. And so kids in being able to go out and learn in this amazing weather has been just, it's really nice. You can take your mask off for a little bit and come, and just learn together. I love Westlake and all those shared spaces.
Yeah, the design committee really got that piece right. There's so many great things about our campus, but I've always loved those. Shannon?
I'm going to celebrate all of you teachers and teachers everywhere. I feel like, we've been celebrating you, but I think it's been fun having someone on campus a little bit more now to hear even more firsthand experience of all the goings-ons and how challenging it can be, even just in a substitute capacity. So I am going to celebrate all of the teachers and all their hard work through this ongoing and tumultuous time.
Thanks, Shannon. I celebrated as a joke during our governance committee meeting, but I guess I'm just going to stick with it and celebrate allergy medications. As Janie mentioned, it's been nice to be out in the outdoor spaces. With that has come some really pretty tree blooms and some nice flowers and some spring allergies. And so I'm just thankful that I have access to medications that make me feel better. I also just want to thank the community for all the work we continue to do to get our kiddos to school and to keep the place happy and running. And we can't celebrate enough the fact that our community's put in so much effort over the last 2 years to keep the train on the tracks. So with that, Steve, would you like to celebrate?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. I'll celebrate the same thing I did last meeting as well. But there's a lot of stuff going on these days and a lot of things to think about. And so it's nice to have something that we don't have to think about. And that thing, I think, at least at this moment, is the landscaping here on campus and our partners, Lawn and Order. They really keep this place looking super sharp. It's nice to pull up and everything's trimmed and clipped and trees are standing straight. And it's really a beautiful campus. So, we'll just give a shout out to that and to Lawn and Order.
Now, I don't like to play favorites with the other board members, but I feel like in this moment I'm going to have to because I somehow managed to skip my favorite board member. So, Lila, would you like to celebrate?
I knew I was your favorite. I've always known that. I'm gonna celebrate Jessica Block, our technology teacher on special assignment. She is doing everything. She is doing everything well. Really exciting. She is bringing a makerspace here to the high school as part of our Flex Block offerings. It's just such a great offering for students. And yeah, she's just incredible.
Thanks, Lila. Amy, would you like to celebrate?
Yes, I will celebrate with Sean on the 24-hour vet clinics. I've used quite a fair share of them in the past 6 months. So I too appreciate them, and I don't even mind sitting in the parking lot late at night. I will celebrate my own vet tech daughter, who today brought a dog out of anesthesia. The dog freaked out. She had to restrain it, and it bit her. And she had to go to urgent care and did all the things, but she's fine. She's she's fine. She's home. So I will celebrate our emergency clinics and vet techs, including my favorite one.
Thanks, Amy. John, do you have one you'd like to celebrate now, or do you want to save them for your report?
I got slides later, but I do have one little story I'd love to tell. A good, friend of mine, a colleague here on campus, spends a lot of time working with kids, working with students who are struggling. And yesterday spent, I'm not kidding, like 2.5, 3 hours, like on the floor with a child who was melting down. And, this person, will go unnamed, but like this person just pours themselves into our children. And at the end of like 3 hours being on the floor, this person's like, not as old as me, but is no spring chicken, and grabbed the handle on her desk table and said, "Whew!" I grabbed this handle and pull myself up off the floor. And this little, first grader or kindergartner was like, "Oh, okay, whatever." That same employee was on the floor today in that child's classroom, jamming with that child, making sure that child was okay, which demonstrates the type of person this is. This person spent 2.5 hours yesterday de-escalating with this child, then went back to this kid's class today to be like, "Hey man, how you doing?" And last night, I know she had moments after 2.5 hours of being on the floor with the kid. She had moments of like, this job maybe is like, is it worth, this is a hard job. And today, that little first grader got up off the floor and said, "I know you needed a handle to get up yesterday. Do you need a handle?" And put out his hand. And this person was like, "Yep, love my job." The person's on the screen. Her name's Amy Wells. Don't tell her I told you. She's amazing with kids.
It sounds better the way you told it.
She's amazing with kids, but also the celebration is that we are all reminded when working with these children, like that why we work here. We are reminded, like when they put their hand down and go, "Do you need a hand?" You're like, "Yep, you got me. I'll be back for another 20 years of this." So anyway, thanks Amy Wells for what you do for our amazing children. Thank you to all the families who bring their amazing children to us. We love this child that I was describing, and Amy pours love into that child. And someday when he walks across that graduation stage, we're gonna be like, "Well, see you in college." Hopefully it's Westlake University by then. We'll be opening up a university.
Well, and I think it also highlights the fact that you never know how you might fill someone's bucket, right? And it is the little things and the little offers of help and the steps along the way that really help in times like this to, just to really brighten one's mood and their commitment. So with that, are there any other board comments on items that aren't on the agenda? Seeing none, that brings us to the initial public comment portion of the evening. This period is meant to be a time for people to make comments on items that aren't on tonight's agenda. John, have we received anything, or is there anyone waiting?
Why, yes, there is I don't know if anybody's waiting, but there is a board comment in the inbox. I've got that. Let me go look at the Zoom and see if anybody's waiting. I don't see anybody waiting to get into the Zoom room, so we'll just dive into this general board comment. Would you like me to read it?
Yes, please.
All right. It reads, "I am always thankful for board members' work on behalf of our Westlake community, and I have been so appreciative of the virtual format for watching and commenting. News of in-person meetings is very exciting, and continuing some virtual options to keep the community involved in a way that is most convenient and comfortable is also wonderful to hear. Thank you, Carissa Richards Johnson." And I will forward this to you, Ms. Wells, so you can put it on the record. But yes, I think it's a wonderful celebration and comment. Sent. There we go. And there seem to be no other comments.
Perfect. No, that's just a text. I look forward to seeing Mrs. Johnson in person when I can. I've missed her face. With that brings us to reports. I don't see Amber on tonight. Amy, do you have a report for WAVE?
Her youngest daughter started dance class tonight, and so she needed to go be a mom, and she sent me the best picture of her daughter, which is lovely. But she said that basically she and John are still kind of brainstorming a bunch of ideas on ways that we can keep bringing our community together in safe ways, but that feel good and that get those connections back up and running. So that was the big thing she wanted to let people know.
Perfect. Thanks, Amy. Charter Impact, Shannon?
Yes, so we met and we kind of had like a reset. We had missed our December meeting and holidays and everything. So we wanted to start talking about really timeline, purpose, audience for this kind of like equity report that we've been talking about pulling together. So we spent a lot of time digging into what we all think the purpose is, and then brainstorm some outcomes, ideas of what we want to use this data for. We're going to collect it, but how are we going to use it, and how are we going to use that to really measure and determine our impact. And so for next time, we're going to be pulling together an ugly, sloppy copy spreadsheet of like what data is plausible to even report on, and then start going from there on. From what's plausible, what do we think makes the most sense to actually help us drive outcomes? So that's where we are.
I have mute issues tonight. Thanks, Shannon. This is also a good point in time to sort of point out that normally our fourth Thursday meetings of impact and finance are actually next Thursday because of February break. And so for people who wanted to attend or who were interested, or for board members who may have forgotten, I know I had, I see, it looks like Dr. Ike might have. Just know, I'm pretty sure we're meeting next Thursday, and I'm sure Steve will correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, next Thursday. Or he was going to not be listening. I was going to catch him at that. No, just kidding. Josh, development.
Yeah, thank you. So we met on Monday, and we're getting our marketing materials together as the next push, so we can start making presentations to businesses in regarding sponsoring a student for the Museum of Tolerance. Our other goal was to find a grant writer, to which Hope said, we've been looking for one for a long time. Good luck. So we have found a class about grant writing done virtually. So Hope, I'm going to take grant writing just so you can't win this bugger. So we've got that coming up. So that'll be nice. We're still working on a couple of other participants to join us in the grant writing seminar, but wanted to thank our development committee member, Ashley Patel, for bringing this to our attention. And it was an in-person deal. So we're like, I don't think we're going to do this, but they switched it to virtual. So it's coming up on February 22nd, and I'm excited to learn. And there's a chance, they say, that you can walk away with a grant after taking the class. So we'll see how we do.
I mean, you kid, but I do think my daughter was in kindergarten or first grade when I remember Rob Holmer asking, right, Amy? And Sean too, asking everyone if there was a grant writer. So there is some history, and I have some backup for that. My daughter's now in 10th grade, so that's a number of years.
It's too long. I think I found one. He just needs some training.
I am super excited for that journey for you, Josh. I think you'll be a great grant writer. Sean, in finance.
So we met last month, I don't know, some number of weeks ago at this point. It's hard to keep track, although we are indeed meeting next week. So I do remember that. We got a great update from Steve on the governor's January budget proposal, minimum wage, and then also continued our seemingly never ending, but it isn't never ending. It's like half a year process of looking at certificated compensation.
There we go. Now, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong. We're hoping maybe, right, to have a plan for certificated comp on next month's agenda. Yes, right. So I just so people know that one maybe in March, maybe April, but hoping we're shooting for March to have that plan on the board's agenda.
Yeah, we're putting it as an action item, so that if we're ready to take action, we can take action.
Exactly. Perfect. Thank you, Sean. Governance met tonight. We spent the meeting discussing our 2 discussion topics that are coming up later in the evening. And so we'll add more feedback to that then. With that, John, do you want to kick off your executive director's report?
Absolutely. Let's take a look here. I want to make sure that I click the right button. Can you all see those slides right there? Thank you for the thumbs up, Janie. Appreciate you. There we go. Well, welcome everyone. Let's encourage our public right there. If you are interested in joining our meeting via Zoom, that is the little link that was flashing across the screen earlier. Let's dive in and do some celebrations, then some strategic actions and some updates. Our Westlake Charter High School started a Key Club. I think we celebrated that last month actually, but the Key Club has done its first community activity. The high school students came over to the kindergarten through 8th grade campus and did some campus cleanup, and it was really kind of cool to see our Key Club really get fired up about community taking community action, and they did a great job. Very proud of them. Obviously, Joyful Learning Kindergarten all the way through 9th grade on that screen right there. I want to just note, I know we talk a lot about the pandemic, we talk a lot about health and safety, we talk a lot about all the regulations and mandates and things we have to follow. I think we sometimes forget that every single teacher out there who's working incredibly hard is working incredibly hard at what you see right here. Student learning. If you walked around this place, you would forget quickly that there's all these mandates and things that we're grappling with. You'd walk into classrooms and see kids collaborating and creating and producing and learning happening everywhere. It is so much fun to be here. And as we all talk about, when will we all be back on campus together, and when will campus open up, and when can we have visitors again? I just want to continue to remind everybody that on the inside of Willy Wonka's gates, while everyone's stuck on the outside, inside here, in the chocolate factory, it is a beautiful, beautiful space where joyful learning is happening. Our kids are doing incredibly well in every space that I walk into. I want to give a little shout out and congratulations to our 8th grader, Rayhan, who is our 8th grade spelling bee winner. Really an interesting way to do spelling bee this year. Maybe in future years we'll return back to regular, oratory, out loud spelling bee, but because of masks and pandemics and whatnot, the spelling bee was done a different way. But it was fun to watch all these kids compete. And then we found out digitally who are spelling. That you're offered 20 words to spell, and he's got 20 out of 20. He nailed it. So he is going on to represent our school in the regional spelling bee competition. We had our virtual perspective parent tours, which is, our second time doing it virtually, and maybe we'll be back on campus before too long and be walking people around. But we got some great engagement. A couple of hundred people logged into YouTube and watched our prospective parent tours, asked great questions on the forum. We answer those questions live, and it was great to work with the team on that. And then field lessons are starting to bubble. We're starting to say, okay, well, maybe we're not getting on buses and going anywhere yet, but I think we might be soon. But what can we do if we can't do that? Well, you got 4th grade classrooms, going out to Valley Oak Park next door, little field lessons for earning prizes for in-class activities. We had Explorer at Science Center come in and do some in-class field lessons in 3rd grade. So, we're slowly starting to peel that onion, of what can we do to offer more and more exploratory experiences to kind of match the mission of the way we do what we do. And this is a really cool celebration. If you have the opportunity to get down to the Crocker Art Center before March 27th, please look around for this section, the Youth Art Month section. We have 4 of our explorers who have their art on display in the Crocker Art Museum right now, and it's super cool. I've talked to a couple of our staff members who have jaunted down there on the weekend, and they said, both of them who I talked to said, it's you see it, you go, oh yeah, that's one of our kids. There's a little sense of well, that's awesome. What a great sense of pride. So big shout out to our students whose art is on display right now at the Crocker. Head on down and check it out. Jumping out of celebrations, I guess strategic actions, and then updates are really short so that we can keep the meeting moving along today. Strategic actions I'll discuss there. Next steps as the Omicron surge recedes, and then a conversation on preparing for the fall of 2022. Let's kind of dive in. So what's happening with Omicron, right? We all came, you see the chart on the bottom of this slide. We all recognize this is the initial, when we closed down back in March of 2020, and we went throughout, the full school closure, distance learning, came into the fall, and then this was this Omicron surge that we just experienced in a very short amount of time. But you can see it's dropped all the way back down to here, and so this is what what we've experienced regarding Omicron in the first 5 days of January at school and the first 5 days of February at school, kind of week 1 versus week 1. So you can kind of see what's transpired. The number of cases on campus, we had 38 students and 9 staff members who were on campus and tested positive for COVID-19 in the first 5 days of January. Each one of those could have resulted in up to 30 contact tracing emails going out. I mean, 30 times 38, 30 times 9, right? This is why we shifted to group contact tracing. 1 month later, in the first 5 days of February, 8 students, 2 staff members. Still not as low as 0, but you could see the shift. Unfilled positions, because we've talked a lot about this surge affecting staffing and having the ability to bring substitute staffing in who are in short supply and who are also vulnerable to potentially testing positive. In the first week of January, we had 17 unfilled teaching positions. We used our Franken substitute process to fill those. We call them Franken subs. 17 Franken subs were used in the first 5 days. So just to say that again, like there were 17 full day assignments in the first 5 days with nobody there to do the job. And luckily we have a collaborative atmosphere here. Teachers are subbing for each other. Administrators are in there. It's just everybody who can get in there is in there. And then we had 3 unfilled positions in the first week of February. So, the rate has dropped. This is a big one here, everybody. Like imagine if your attendance rate was this all year long or for any extended period. 83.9. Sean, the finance committee is like, oh, attendance, right? A funding rate. In that week, that might have been the lowest week in the history of Westlake Charter School. And it's rebounded now to 92.15, which is a much more realistic place for us to be. I just wanted you to see this. So yes, the Omicron surge caused some real havoc and it is receding. Not done yet, but it is clearly on the way out. So we got to prepare for change. What changes? Maybe some good changes, but we need to be clear. California is announcing that there's new K-12 guidance coming down the pike as no later than this coming Monday. So next week we're expecting new guidance from the state of California, and specifically around topics like masking in the K-12 environment, because we know as of February 15th, the statewide mask mandate in public settings is going to be removed. So your local grocery store or other office, no more mask mandate. But remember, that doesn't really apply to schools because K-12 schools actually fall under its own separate masking ordinance. So we're going to get new masking guidelines next week. We know that Oregon, the state of Oregon, New Jersey, Connecticut, Delaware are all planning to lift their K-12 mask mandates. So we're like, okay, California, is this what we're heading towards? So we got a little analysis from the Association of California School Administrators, ACSA. Happy to be part of that little group there. They've got a little superintendent's corner that gives out some pretty good intel. And from their kind of analysis, this is the advice they're giving superintendents right now across the state of California. They're saying, hey, California is not likely to drop the mask mandate for the entire state on a single day. Meaning, like, as of February 12th, no masks anymore in school. They don't propose that that's going to happen next week. However, what they are saying is like it's potential that we're going to see the state of California come out next week and say, hey, we're watching the state of California drop its mask mandate. We're going to give you 15 days, or we're going to give you 30 days, or we're going to watch the bellwether for 20 days. And on this day over here, we might start lifting the mandates. So that's what we're hearing, is that it might be okay, as of this date, wait 20 days till this date. Again, these are just best guesses, right? But what we're hearing is that the mask mandates might also be associated with certain criteria, right? Like vaccination rates in a population. Like, hey, if your school has a vaccination rate up, maybe that's a criterion. Or your community has an infection rate below X. Like, remember back when we were hoping to get below 7 per 100,000. Below that was a check mark for us. So there may be some criterion associated with who gets to not mask in school, and we'll know more as that comes out. Here's something that just caught me very, very clear. These people doing the analysis do not believe that mask mandates will be in place by the end of the school year. So I think if we all look ahead at where we are today, where we think we'll be at the end of the school year should probably look a lot like where we hope to be at the beginning of next school year, which is good change management, right? We all want to like change on our way to May so that we live in June in the way that we want to wake up again in August. And so I can see the state working in that direction if all the science makes sense. So I give you this because making the changes that we've had to make to get to where we are today have been a ton of work. And I think there's often a common perception that like, oh, you would just stop doing that and you'd go back to where you were. However, like when you're managing, 1,500 human beings a day, and you have these processes, procedures, and protocols that get everybody on campus, in class, and off campus, it's going to take a little while to unwind all the things and get back to what anybody would call normal. But we're looking forward to that work, and we'll follow these guidance in doing that work, especially when we consider the benefits of reconnecting our community and doing the things that come from this type of work. So what are the next steps? Like, well, I'm just going to, I know this sounds silly, but we're kind of engaged in them now. 2 weeks ago, in the midst of Omicron, we're like, we have to cancel that school dance. Like, we can't even get people to come to work. Everyone's catching COVID-19. And as we watched the rate drop, we went ahead and targeted the dance for this weekend. And now we're having the dance. Things are starting to happen. Things that we wanted to happen. Things that we thought were going to happen in early December. We're like, we're back. We're coming back. And then bam, January hit us right in the jaw. But we're starting to see, okay, rates are dropping as they were predicted to do so. And things are coming back on the table. So school dances, 6th through 12th grade sports with spectators are happening on campus. After school parent volunteerism, there's like 20 or 30 parents volunteering to put on these dances, the high school and the middle school dances. You have several parents involved in after school volunteerism through our after school live program. So like, if you think back to the fall, we were locked down pretty tight, and we are still locked down pretty tight, all things considered, but you could see we're in the process of getting moving in the right direction. Field lessons are moving in the right direction. We're planning for Sierra Outdoor Schools in the 6th grade, which is the overnight field lesson at the science camp. We are planning for the Museum of Tolerance. This is an overnight field lesson for 9th grade. We are planning for the Santa Cruz field trip in 8th grade, which is an overnight field trip in 8th grade. We have 5th grade planning for FEYA, which is not overnight, but it is a busing field trip. So here we go. We're bringing field lessons back on the table. So again, we can do anything we want. We can't do everything we want. What are we targeting right away? Reconnecting our community, getting those kids out into exploratory learning opportunities. What are the next steps? Really reconnecting our families. We got to get our parents, the opportunity to be around our school. It's where we all want to be. We just got to figure out how to do that in a sensible way, right? Increasing our volunteerism opportunities for families, and then considering like what type of community events are appropriate. When are we allowed to like really be a community together again? So really looking forward to that work. I got to tell you though, this is an African proverb that I utilized in my own dissertation. It's one of my favorites. I use it all the time when I'm talking to staff members. I think somebody would recognize that we've said this a lot. It's, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that means that like all the work that we did to get here, we did together as a community, working together. And all the next steps we take are not any easier than the ones that we took to get here. So we're doing some strategic planning tonight as a board. I need to hear from you as our vision setters. Where are we at? What's important to us? I have a parent coffee talk on Tuesday night. We're even considering doing like a parent survey that goes out like, hey, where are you at? What's important to you? Where do you want to be as we approach, let's think toward June, and then let's think toward August. Like, what are you comfortable with as a community? We're going to have a staff roundup on Wednesday. Same thing. That's going to be followed up by a survey. Hey, staff, where are you at? What are you comfortable with? What makes you feel safe? What makes you feel supported? And then we're going to take all the information. We're going to say, we can do anything we want. Can't do everything we want, right? If everything's important, nothing's important. And if you try and do everything, you won't do anything. So like, what do you want to do first? So we'll set a clear vision for what's important to our community, and then also ask ourselves, what are we empowered to execute, right? As of today, we cannot execute on removing masks in classrooms because we do not have the power to do that. If that becomes important to us and the state of California drops that, then there we go. That's what we'll be able to do. We'll organize our next steps into kind of a logical sequence. We can't possibly, reopen the campus, have community organization, it can't all happen in one day, 1 week. It's going to take time. We're going to logically sequence how can we get our community rebuilt and all these things back to how we want them to be. But it's going to take time, and then we'll take each step together and we'll listen to feedback. Right? What are we doing? Where are we going too fast? Where are we going too slow? And we'll listen and make those decisions. So I just want to kind of tell you kind of where I feel like we are on that front there. Before we go forward, any questions on like what the state of California is saying, what we think we're going to be doing as they say that? Any questions, thoughts, or concerns, board? Cool. We'll keep you informed. Hope.
John, I just want to just reiterate the fact that you and your administrative team at this point don't know what the state's going to be saying. Like, just for those listening out there, you're doing the best with the information you have, but like anything else, these steps will be very dependent, at least I think, on sort of what those guideposts are and what the indicators are, and we just don't know what those are yet. So I'm sorry to interrupt. I feel like that's the sort of the conclusion here, right? Is you will do all these things, but it's still so much is out of your control.
But yes. At the end of the day, we'll have guidance, but these guidelines may be flexible, and like, which drives me a little crazy. I'd like to just have rules. Like, I know what the speed limit is. It's on the sign. If they put up on the speed limit sign, hey, flexibly, be safe, it would be a crazy place to drive. So I'm afraid, though, that guidance may be a little flexible. So I'd like to hear from our community as we go forward, like, hey, where are we at? What's important to you? What do you prioritize? And luckily, if we do any survey work, it'll happen after Monday, so we might know a little more.
I guess all I was trying to say is flexibility is key. You kind of nailed it, right? Yeah. Like, you're going to have to be flexible as the guidance comes out. As we take the steps to open more, that flexibility is just going to have to be there. And then I guess I'm just looking for some understanding that we'll do what we can. Like you said, we can do we'll do what we can when we can, and there's just a lot more to come.
Yeah, it'll be a ton of work. But I think it'll be work that feels, it'll feel good. It'll feel good to move forward as a community. Okay, team. Well, just a couple of strategic actions on preparing for the fall of 22. I just want to let you know about staffing. We've talked a lot about the staffing crisis in education right now. The rhetoric around the lack of people entering the field at this point. So the incoming pool is shrinking and the existing pool is also shrinking, which is a very unique time. However, we every year invite all of our staff to have let us know if they intend to return. And then we have meetings with people who want to talk about, hey, what are your 3 to 5 year goals? Or is there a position in the organization you'd like to shift to? Oh, you work at this grade level, but you'd like to shift to this grade level. And those intent to return meetings are going very well. I'm very excited. I love meeting with our staff. I'm very excited to hear that it feels like we have a high retention rate coming back next year, because hey, if we're gonna have an awesome year coming out of this last 2 years that we've had, I'd like to have it with the people we have right now. We got some amazing people. So intent returns are going very well. Recruitment for 10th grade is strong. Our applicant pool is already open for those 10th grade positions, right? You need a 10th grade math teacher, you need a 10th grade English teacher. So it's super exciting. We're seeing the application pool fill up. Our amazing principal, Emily Batten, is, not on screen tonight because she's at the basketball game right now because our kids are playing against Leroy Green. But, every time an application drops in the pool, she picks up the phone. Hi, thanks for applying. Tell me a little about you. Like, she is really doing the work that you want your principal to do to make sure that we are in a really strong recruitment process right now. Because a lot of times people will be dropping an application, at least in the education sector. They're like, hey, I got a math credential, and they just throw that application at all 27 math openings. But if you got a call from the principal, you're like, oh, that school seems all right. And they kind of move themselves to the top of the list. And that's the work we want to be doing for sure. 10th grade has a lot of work to be done. And I don't want anybody to fall unaware of that. So Westlake Charter Kindergarten through 8th grade has a real strong track record of how we run year after year. Westlake Charter High School is crushing it in 9th grade, but we have never had a 10th grader. So as much work went into opening up 9th grade, I want you to all know is that much work to open up 10th grade. It's not just going to rinse and repeat. It's a whole different model. So right now we are blueprinting some of our 9th grade practices, for example, flex blocks, right? We want to make sure that before we get out of this year that we sit down and say, how are the flex blocks working? Where are they not working? What innovations and iterations need to happen before we get another 150 kids in this place? And they're launching a flex block ad hoc, for example. But that's some of the blueprinting work that's happening. But we are building the 10th grade dual enrollment program right now for our students that take college courses next year. So it all looked great on paper. Like, let's have a dual enrollment program. It is great. But someone has to really get in and build it out and meet with the college counselors and meet with the college advisors and do all the work. And Mrs. Batten is over there right now with her team making that happen for next year. And it's really good strategic work. Our students are going to have such phenomenal opportunities next year as 10th graders to both enter in dual enrollment, but also engage in 10th grade embedded honors, which again, something we dreamed up, something we stole from other organizations, but something we have to implement next year. So if you thought it was hard to open 9th grade, next year you got to reopen 9th grade again for the new 9th graders and kind of invent 10th grade from scratch. So a lot of work happening at the high school over there, and all that boils down to building out that master schedule. And the more kids you get, the more complex the master schedule becomes. And there's some really good work being done on that. The counseling team will sit down with every single student and family and talk about their 4-year plan. And that 4-year plan somewhat indicates what classes the students would like to take next year. And you take those electives from the students and start building out that master schedule. It's very complicated work to get done right, but they are doing the right work to make sure it looks good going into next year. So we feel like we're getting well prepared for the fall, and it's only late winter. So any questions on that, team? Cool. This next one's just about lottery applications. Very excited, to show you the numbers. Then I'll get off the screen and go on to our next topic. A couple of interesting notes, right? Obviously, we'll go back in history to 2017. We had 982 applications. You know what's going to happen next. The number's just going to start climbing. We go in 2019, we break 1,000, then immediately jump up to 1,383, 1,377, slight dip. Everyone write on a napkin, what do you think today's number is? Did anybody think it was 1,482? Because if you did, you were right. That's a lot of applications right there. It's 1,482 applications. I'm going to break it down for you on the next slide by grade level. There's some wins. There's some also some interesting points. One thing to point out right away is there's a dip in the 9th grade, which is really interesting. 106 8th grade applications, and now we have 76 8th grade applications. Wow, that's a little bit light. We did look back at last year. We do expect some trickle in after the fact, but with the strong sense that we're getting from our 8th grade families, we're still projected to be over enrolled from our 150 mark. But interesting. Poured a ton of direct marketing into that high school piece. Poured a ton of print marketing, digital marketing. You'd think word of mouth because the kids are seeming to enjoy it. And I'll tell you one indicator. At the semester break, we had 5 students enroll in our school's second semester. So word on the street is good because kids are telling their friends, hey man, you're not happy, come on over here. So we're growing now, but that lottery pool didn't grow, it shrunk. So interesting, don't know why, and we'll just keep working at it. But that's an interesting analysis there. I guess just to look at the numbers real quick, right? Very healthy numbers in obviously, K5. really interesting in sixth grade. We crushed it in sixth grade last year. 140 applications. Remember that sixth grade is a good entry point for us because that's a matriculation grade level. And we did real well last year, and we exactly the same number this year. 140 again this year. Look at this bump in eighth grade. And I wonder if that bump in eighth grade is because we now have a high school and people are like, oh, I'll jump in the eighth grade. Don't know, but that's an interesting bump there. We did get 20 10th grade applications, which we don't totally need, but we're grappling with how many you would enroll and call full enrollment. Because remember, the original deal with NUSD was we cap out at 500, which would be 125 per grade level, and we're already over 125 in freshman year. So you kind of have to make this decision of like, what do you do with those lottery numbers right there? And so we are working on that piece. One thing that's always interesting to us, right, is the number of students who qualify for Title I or for free and reduced lunch services. We have an increase in our kinder Title I applications up to, we have 69 applications in kindergarten, which is up from 63 last year and up from 54 2 years ago. So that's an interesting and nice increase. What's cool about that is since we changed our lottery preferences in our last material revision and we put siblings ahead of our free and reduced lunch, it has increased our Title I pool now projected 3 years in a row because we have 19 siblings that qualify for free and reduced lunch. And if you pull them first, because now siblings are first, then you already have 19 students that qualify for free and reduced lunch. Then you pull your 22 non-siblings and you add those to the 19 and you're already at 37% of your kindergarten class would qualify for free and reduced lunch, and that's before any other Title I applicants just get pulled from other preference groups like general lottery. So anyway, that's a celebration. We think that's really showing some growth because the board decided to make the switch that you did. So that's the analysis there. Any noticings, wonderings, questions, thoughts, or concerns about the lottery? It's very exciting. A lot of people want to go to your school. You're doing a good job. Keep it up. No? All right.
And John, the lottery, sorry, is March 7th, right?
I am so just going to nod and smile.
Okay.
I think that's
I'll go
true.
with it. It's March 7th.
I think it's March 7th. But for some reason, is that what day
No.
is that?
Isn't that the first Monday in March?
The
Amy,
day-
did it change?
I think you're looking at the board master calendar for next year. I think it's
No, I'm just looking at the calendar.
oh,
There's
maybe-
nothing fancy. It's just my phone.
Janie, you giving a confirmation there? Sorry, I would open up tabs and look.
Hold on, I'm looking. Hope's probably right because she's amazing like that.
But now that you mention
March
it,
7th.
I think it is March 7th on that master calendar, so we probably need to fix it.
All right, Steve just confirmed March 7th. So let's stick with that topic and call it
Yep.
March 7th. So everyone who's at home watching will be having a random public lottery on March 7th.
And that, John, I mean, that's still going to be virtual, right? Do we know
Well,
yet? We don't know yet.
I mean, when I woke up this morning, that was the plan. But you know what? Everything could change. So it may be hope and no guarantees that we do one of these split screen deals where we're like, hey, we're live in person, but also on the screen, which is probably how we're going to do coffee talk next week. So and that's how our board meetings will be. So yeah, let's consider all the above.
Well, I just put it out there, John, because for families who may be in the lottery watching from home, right, who are wondering, is just to keep their eyes peeled for information. I'm sure we'll let everybody know how we're doing it. I just wanted to put it, just to acknowledge when the date was and what the potential process might be.
Love it. Any other questions on lottery, thoughts or concerns? Feels good. We've got almost 1,500 people applied to attend our school. That's good work. That is the end of my updates there. I'll go back to the agenda here. And Hope is back to you. Is this the right agenda? It is.
Yeah, I think so, right?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, yes, it is. Before we get to the consent agenda, John, would you mind just doing a
Oh,
quick
yeah.
check for public comment?
Yes, ma'am. I've seen no public comment.
Perfect. Did board members have any questions on the consent agenda? We have 4 or 5 items on tonight for approval. And if there aren't any questions about what's on the consent agenda, is there a motion to approve?
I motion to approve.
Thanks, Janie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Sean. Amy, will you please take the vote?
Oh,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Josh,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Janie,
Yes.
Lila,
Yes.
and Shannon.
Yes.
Great, thank you. We actually have no action items tonight, which brings us to our discussion items. The first one being a strategic planning workshop to discuss current strategic plan and to determine priorities for the 22-23 school year. John, you want to kick that off?
Yeah, I have a little presentation. I'll try to riff through it, but what I would love for you to do is, as I give this presentation, really kind of get in your mind, okay, like looking at next year, knowing where we are, where we've been, which of the current strategic goals and objectives are ones that I, as a board member, think we should really focus on, knowing that, we can do anything we want, we can't do everything we want, we could really put our energies in a few areas, not in every area. Where would you like us to target in the fall as we kick off next year? The second piece I'd like you to ask yourself as we go through this is, based on where we are today, is there something that's really something that's part of our mission, part of our vision, but just isn't really captured in this strategic plan because we wrote it and launched it in January of 2019. So what do you want to focus on this coming year? And is there anything missing from the plan? Let me dive in. Remember, we have 5 goal areas, and the 5 areas align to our mission, right? So we demonstrate what is possible, and then the objectives are below. I've shortened the objectives, recruit and retain, shared leadership, nimble and flexible, open to innovation, stewardship and education, and expand K-12, right? So that in the strategic plan, these are much more wordy. I just kind of narrowed them down so I can fit them on a slide, but we'll riff through quickly. We demonstrate what's possible in goal 1. When school and community collaborate, goal 2, up at the top, we have school collaboration. We want our school to be utilizing the MTSS work, working around PLCs and have vertically aligned social, emotional, and academic assessments. But on the parent side or community side, we want to partner with WAVE, board development, our development committee, include and listen to all the voices of our community and expand our after-school opportunities. Goal area 3 is about academics. Goal area 4 is about social and emotional readiness. And goal area 5 is our lead as global citizens. And here in objective 1, where we define global citizenry, is graduating explorers who embrace equity, inclusivity, diversity, and cultural competencies, right? That's kind of the work that we're doing inside of here. Those are our 5 strategic goal areas. We'll come back to this slide and throw it up there as we hold our discussion, but I want to remind you that we have this strategic plan website. Everybody get my email yesterday, and there's a link in there. Hopefully you clicked on it, you saw, oh, that's right. We have this whole website that's got all of our strategic plan laid out on it. It kind of looks like this right here on the home page. It really tells the story of how we came to these goals, and it has data indicating progress toward our goals. So, one of the pages that I really like in the strategic planning website is this full plan page. It gives you the strategic plan itself, so you can read through, the vision statement, the mission statement, the core values, and you can see all the goals written out. But what I love about this page also is that it demonstrates that this strategic plan was really crowdsourced. We have pages and pages of narrative from parents and from community members and from teachers and staff members who said this is what we should be working on as a school. And you can go look at those documents and really see how this strategic plan came to fruition. We've already kind of acknowledged the goals align with the mission. We kind of thought that was fun. We love that right there. And the objectives obviously lean toward the vision. So if you read that vision statement, it's a 1-page, 5-paragraph essay, about the vision. Where should we be in the future? And that future is coming quick because we wrote this thing back in 2019. And if you look at all of the objectives under our goals and that you read an objective, that objective should align to a part of our vision for our future. So when we arrive at this vision, it's because we accomplished all of these objectives. When we launched this thing back in January of 2019, we started collecting data. Now, this is a kind of an interesting way to collect data. In fact, the Impact team has asked me to build some data dashboards on some work that we're doing in Impact. And I worked with a data consultant whom I happen to know, Dr. Joel Raven, really good guy, lives right here in Natomas. And I met with him about a separate data project, but I showed him this and he's like, wow. People don't normally do what you guys are doing. I'm like, yeah, we sprinkle a little Westlake on everything. He says, well, I fly around the country and I take people's quantitative data and I try to weave it into a narrative and tell a story about the data. He goes, that's what I get paid to do. I fly around and help people make data stories out of their hard numeric data. He says, what you guys have done here is you've actually told your narrative along the way, and now you're grappling with a way to quantify it. He's like, that's fascinating. And I love what we've done here. What we've done is every time the admin team gets together, periodically now we're down to monthly more or less, when the admin team gets together and say, hey, what strategic actions have we taken in the last month that align to our objectives and goals? And we open up the form and we put in a little narrative. And now you can see there's been over 550 individual narratives typed in by staff members that say, this is the work we're doing aligned to our objectives and our goals, which is really cool. 550 individual narratives. And you can see on this chart over here, let me try and break this out. This chart over here, you can see the left side indicates in goal area 1 what percentage of all the narratives that we entered were assigned to goal area 1 prior to the pandemic. These are the 132 entries that were made in the 16 months between January of 2019 and March of 2020. Are you with me? This is 132 entry. Cool. So out of these, if you get 132 entries here, that means that 40% of all the entries we made in those first 16 months were about goal area 1. I think that's interesting. It's a way to quantify how much energy are you putting into each goal area. Clearly, this goal area got the most energy both before the pandemic and this side over here is the 22 months after the pandemic. So I think it's interesting. You can see we kind of dropped off in the number of entries we were making because I think we got a little busy. I'll give us that. But the percentages are interesting. In goal area 1, it looked like we increased our energy. Well, why? Well, we're working a lot on our innovation, our openness to new ideas, being nimble and flexible, and engaging in shared leadership. So it's really interesting. The pandemic hits, and we are doing a lot of work in goal area 1. Jump down here, you can see there's less conversations during the pandemic happening around raw academics. And it makes sense. I mean, in reality, we are, in the first 3 months, scrambling to do all distance learning. Then in the next 3 months after that, re-scrambling to reinvent distance learning. We're not doing any of our real objective-driven academic work. We are scrambling just to offer academics at all, and we didn't log that. So that's interesting. There's a drop-off there in the raw number of entries, the raw energy put into stretching toward our academic goals. However, if you look down here, there's actually a little increase in goal area 5 because after a summer of civil unrest, we turned and spent a lot of attention around issues of equity and access, inclusivity, diversity, cultural competencies. And so you can see some of those numbers go up due to those narratives. Now, this is publicly available data because it's on this little website that I built and anybody can click and take a look and read through it. And you could probably go through and data dive and come up with other analysis. This was just me quickly going I wonder what I noticed. I wonder what I wonder. I know it's super small and you probably can't see it, but before I jump onto the final part of our conversation, is there anything about this portion that you have a thought, that you a noticing or a wondering, I'll call your name and you can pass. You can be like, pass. But I'm just gonna like get things started on a whip around. When we look at pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, when we look at just the act of collecting qualitative data, like, oh, you could say, oh, I noticed that we collect a lot of positive, we don't report as much negative. That's a good noticing. Or you could say, I wonder if we had more quantitative measurements, if it would drive us to do more. So what do you notice? What do you wonder about the qualitative method where we collect these narratives, or the way I'm reporting it out over here with these side-by-side analysis? What do you notice? What do you wonder? Either of those, and you could just pass. It's okay. So I'm gonna go Hope, Lila, Shannon. Hope, what do you notice? You got a notice or a wonder for me?
I'm. Do you know? Am I the only board member that's got to do the entry?
I think you might be. At one point, we were going to bring this to the board and have the board do it. And I was guinea pigging on you at one point. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I guess my notice or wondering over it would be an issue of timing, right? And the fact that now, and I get it from a resource perspective, why you might enter in items monthly versus weekly, like we did at one point. But also like celebrations and everything else we do at these meetings, right? As time progresses, it can be more difficult to remember both successes and failures the farther you are away from them.
True.
So I wonder, I wouldn't say like you have to go back to weekly, but is there something where it would be interesting to me if it even went bi-weekly to see if there was an increase in the data received amongst all categories, because it will be fresher.
There will certainly be an increase in data. I don't know if it'd be right, because every week we produce more than every other week. But yeah, I'd be interested. I wonder what would happen. Lila, Shannon, and Janie.
I'm going to pass for now.
Cool. Shannon, anything you notice or wonder? Janie, then Josh.
Yeah, I wonder specifically to like all the pandemic ebbs and flows, if these categories capture a lot of the things that you might reflect on. There's so many new things to have to, and again, I think some of them do, but I think there's probably a whole lot of things that people were feeling that are not captured in here. And I wonder, I just wonder about that.
It's a great one. There are 1,000 strategic actions taken that are not captured in here, right? We're not like, hey, we spray painted dots on the ground to socially distance. Like, we didn't put that in here, but like certainly took a lot of work. Yeah, it's good. It's good. Janie, Josh, and Michelle.
Well, like I shared in governance, I love this spreadsheet. I love anything laid out in a way that makes it so easy to be able to see what we're doing in such a, it's amazing. And I think it would be really interesting for other, I know this is like admin, as admin, you're doing this. It'd be cool for teachers to do something like this, to reflect like this, John. Like, it would be really powerful and keep us, I told you, like, we get in the weeds.
Yeah.
And we're so hard on ourselves.
Totally.
To really be able to see what and touch this in a way and how we're doing it at our level, at different levels of the organization, I think it'd be cool.
Yeah, my original vision was I took it to leadership like one time, but like, it's burdensome to have people do this thing. But then, imagine if I would have done this once a month in leadership, and then I could disaggregate the data by group. It would be fascinating to like see what happens. But yes, I love the idea. Heck, I'd love to be able to crowdsource parents on some type of like regular basis. Yeah, I love that. Thanks, Janie. Josh, Michelle, and Sean.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I like the form. It makes me start to wonder, as things go down, did we put more efforts into other areas, or did it just fall out that way? One of them is, where did it go? The community collaboration, item number 4, went from 21% to 8%. And I assume that has a lot to do with the regulations we had to follow going into COVID.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping, I kind of think we'll pick that up a little bit as we open our arms back up to the community. So I see some excitement in that line right there.
This is why crowdsourcing and crowd communication, this is so brilliant. I didn't even catch that. Yes, the pandemic shuts us down, and we're like, hey, families, we have to do all these things we're told we have to do, and you don't get to really play. And that is, we feel that. Yeah, that's a great. Let's see that one go back the other way. I love it. Good call, Josh. Michelle and Sean.
So I noticed that there's a mix of items that are like continuously improvement. And then there's areas where it kind of seems like if you've done it, you've done it. So like the thing that stood out to me was goal area 4, number 2. There were no entries around developing a metric to be included on the report card, but I know that that metric is there on the report card. So, I just wonder if it was asked a different way, or if there was, just how well did we do in these areas on a scale of 1 to 5, if that would have given us like a different level of different results that would show that folks feel strongly that we've achieved or have grown in that area versus because it's there. It's just maybe nobody said anything this year because it was already there.
Yeah, and it's not to on the inside behind the curtain in that particular area. Are you talking about goal area 4.2 in the social emotional? Yeah, I mean there was some really good progress being made toward that around like creating a legitimate scope and sequence and a metric, and then since the pandemic, although we still continue to work on the SEL piece, that actual vertically aligned metric piece has been. But maybe you're right. There's certainly been some work, the counseling team and whatnot. So some of this data collection is hit and miss on like who shows up month to month, like Hope said. Oh, I forgot. That's right. We had the whole counseling team do that thing. So yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, I didn't realize that it was a 0 right there. That's fascinating. Sean.
Along the same lines as Shannon, I wonder whether some of the quantitative drop in entries is not so much that there was a quantitative drop in actions, but just that taking the time to shoehorn them, these new things that were things that had not been done before, to try to shoehorn them into categories that were developed before those things were necessary. It was just too much. Just do the things and stop trying to fit it on the form.
Yeah. I mean, certainly this is why qualitative. I mean, there would be 1,000 hours of coding this qualitative data and really analyzing outcome. Who's got time? This is just an interesting, like, how many times did it get touched? And there's so many holes in this theory. It's kind of a conversation starter. Because certainly it wasn't like there was less work done in the last 22 months. There was like 10 times the amount of work done. But because we're doing that work, we probably didn't enter it as much, right? Yeah, it's interesting. It's fascinating to look at. I loved, like Janie said, reading through some of the narratives and reminding, oh, wow. Oh, that's right. Right before the pandemic. If you go right back before the pandemic, like January, February of 2020, I mean, we were cooking on this work. We were like, it's really fascinating to go read those entries. I wanted to do that because I wanted you to just have a what do you notice, what do you wonder moment, because I want your voices now. The 2 questions on the screen are, right, as you plan for the fall of 2022, which of our current goals and objectives do you feel are really need to be key areas of focus? I'd love to hear your voice on this. Question 1, what should we focus on in the fall? What are the key areas? Out of these goals and objectives, you could drill down to an objective. You could talk about a major goal. The second question I'll ask is, are there any goals or objectives that are really relevant to our mission and vision that aren't captured on this strategic plan? I'd love to do a whip around structure again. Are you guys okay with more whip arounds? I'll do one whip around, then I'll kind of open it up to the floor. Does that sound okay? Cool. I will go backwards. So I'm going to go Shannon. Nope, that's not Shannon up there. That's Sean. Sorry. I started with a shush and I went the wrong way. Sean, Michelle, Josh. That's the way I'll go. Sean, what would you focus on in the fall?
I think this will happen naturally. So I don't know whether it's something that we need to specifically act on. So I don't know if this is quite what you're getting at, but as these requirements change from governmental entities that tell us what we may and may not do, as it becomes appropriate to get families back on campus. I think that goal area 2, number 4, partner with WAVE, getting our families back as true partners in the school, I think is important because it was a big part of Westlake pre-pandemic, and I think WAVE has done a great job with the hand they were dealt over pandemic, but I think that will be important as we hopefully move out of it.
Yeah, as you said that, it hadn't dawned on me, but if you remove the word wave and just put the word parents or, families in there, student families in there, partner with families in every way. What does that mean? How do we start partnering again? It's good. It's good. Michelle, and then Josh, and then Shannon.
I agree with Sean. I think that is the school, family, community collaboration is a piece that is important and has to naturally just be rebuilt given everything that's happened over the last 2 years. I think the other area that I'd be interested in focusing on is around goal area 4 for the students, given how much, there's been a lot of change for students over the last couple of years, right? School closed, they went back on this modified thing. There's masks. I don't know if some kids, know what their teacher's face fully looks like, or each other's face fully looks like. So, I think we know kids are resilient, but would also want to spend some time focusing and making sure that, kids are doing okay, that they're thriving, and that the emotional aspects are being tended to so that they can thrive in the academic environment too. So I can't fit that tightly because I know that there's like core competencies under, that area, but I would just focusing on making sure our students have outlets, have supports wrapped around them, and also are kind of re-engaging with one another in ways that are respectful and that bring that community back to Westlake.
Yeah, the core competencies that Michelle's talking about, right? Self-awareness, social awareness, responsible decision-making. These are core competencies of social emotional learning. I was engaged in a conversation recently where someone was talking about if you're a second grader who's never attended school without a mask, then you've actually missed out on the facial expressions that are not normal to your family. So if the only faces that I see in an interpersonal way are the ones inside my home, and I come to school, I've missed out on several years of like learning intercultural competencies around facial expressions that are normal to families other than mine, and self-awareness. How do I react? Social awareness. How do others react in ways that are different than mine, but that are acceptable and okay? That's a set of competencies we want our children to experience. So yeah, as we come back to this unmasking thing going forward, we as adults are like, oh, it's good to see you again. But for some of our kids, we have to recognize it's like, oh, I've never seen what you're right. So there's a learning thing there. I think pouring into that SEL piece in a really logical way makes sense. Josh, then Shannon, and then Lila.
Yeah, my key area was goal area 2, number 5, board development, and particularly trying to, expand the board so it, looks more like the student body and the community, better representation, and then looking at the prior. And I know we've talked about it a lot as a board, talking about strengths and weaknesses. How do we identify? And on the last slide that you showed, John, it looked like our percentage actually went down in that category. It went from 7 to 2, I believe. Yeah, so it's number 2 on there. Community collaborator number 2. We went from 7% to 2%.
Logs.
So I'd like to see us put more focus on that and really try to push through in achieving that. And we talked about it, starting from the committees, expanding the committees and developing them out through the board. And I just would like to really, kind of focus on that.
Yeah. I love it. We can do anything we want. Can't do everything we want. Not all at one time anyway. Michelle's kind of talking about connecting with the kids. Sean's kind of talking about protecting the families. Josh is like going after the community through the board. These are all connected to each other, right? It's good. Shannon, Lila, Janie.
Yeah, so I think for me, goal area 4 stands out for a lot of the Michelle basically said everything I was thinking in terms of just, the various stresses and just emotional changes for the students over the past 2 years. So kind of ditto everything Michelle said. And then I would say that the piece I think is missing here is some of that also, those social emotional supports for staff and teachers as well. So I think that in order to be able to do this for the students and for the community and all of that, like we need to make sure that the social emotional wholeness of the whole campus is a priority from my perspective.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's really interesting. So SEL, social emotional learning, is a scope and sequence, initiated by the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning, adopted by the state of California. It's super applied to children. And then you're like, oh, this is kind of how kids should grow and learn. And when they are at the end of their learning journey, they're adults. You're like, okay, great, that's our job. Then you look around the adults, you're like, oh, none of us went through this. And we're assuming we're all here. And so are we supposed to be doing SEL for each other? That feels weird. There's a thing there, right? Or are you talking about mental health? Because that's a different topic, like making sure people feel healthy. Because a lot of people are interchanging that right now. They go, oh yeah, that's SEL. But really what you're talking about, like trauma awareness and trauma recovery and mental health. So it's a different bucket.
Yeah, I think it's both. I think so. It's probably two buckets, and probably some identify more with needing mental health support and others would identify, but I mean, I can speak for myself. It's like, I feel less socially, emotionally prepared to interact with people than I did 2 years ago. Right.
Wow, yes.
And I also probably need more like mental health supports and, so I think it's both of those things, but yeah, I mean, maybe calling it social emotional learning in like that traditional, like stamped way is not correct, but I do think there is some of those things that are like applicable to adults.
But I think what you said is very interesting. And it is when we talk about reconnecting our community, re-equipping ourselves with the ability to interact with our community is something we're gonna have to work our way through, because we've been on these screens and human connection has been missing.
Well, and now that you're saying that, I mean, also part of goal area 2 is we don't know what type of growing pains are going to come out of collaborating with school and community. Lots of people have had very different experiences, different losses, different experiences for the past 2 years. And so some people might be coming back into this like 100%. Others might be like very cautiously coming back to a school and community collaboration type setting, and probably a dozen other things in between. And so, I think that thinking ahead for some of that change management, again, with like the adults, with the parents, with the teachers, with the staff, so that we can all better facilitate like the student change management, I think will be really important.
I think the thought around change management is a really good one. I don't mean to take away from the next presenter, but like, one thought is, and I want to just be clear, we all night tonight we've been saying, hey, we're going to come back and have board meetings in public, and that feels good for some of us. And bringing parents back on campus is an initiative that we want to see happen. But I want to be very clear that like we have to be respectful of where everybody's at coming out of this Omicron last surge, because we still have families requesting distance learning. Like, could we please not come back to school? I am worried about this virus because we have a immune compromised person in our home. We just heard from one of our community members just this last week who lost a loved one to COVID because they were recovering from cancer, and COVID ended up in the home, and they lost that loved one. This isn't a one size fits all, like, hey, let's all come back to school, it's going to be great, we're all excited about it. There's going to be these varying levels of who's ready to do what going forward, and everybody's experience is going to get exposed. There's going to be people who are ready because they haven't experienced it one way, and people who are not ready because they have experienced it another way. Yeah, it's a good call, Shannon. Thank you. This sounds complicated, this work. Lila, Janie, and Hope.
It's interesting. I like really focused on goal area 1, the recruit and retain. And I'm so happy to hear intent to return is going well. Like that kind of just showed, like, changed my perspective. But I think it's connected with what Shannon was saying. Like, if our staff is not okay, that's part of how we retain them, is saying, hey, how do we support your whole well-being? And then I think also the school and community collaboration, I think there's an opportunity to think about, how do we collaborate? Who are we collaborating with? You know, I think it's connected to the work we're going to do in the impact committee. As we're saying, hey, we're revisiting this, we're opening up. What does this look like? Who are we collaborating with, and who are we not collaborating with? And how do we say this is the work that we do as a community? And then I'm gonna keep going. And then the social emotional readiness. Michelle, I love that you talked about the competencies, because there's like specific systemic things to support SEL, but I think bringing in there also PBIS and behavior. As students are coming back, people are learning how to be in school again. Being in a classroom with 22, 28 kids is like a different experience, and we've learned that this year, and it's gonna continue. And just thinking about, how are we modeling that and teaching that in a positive way for our students?
Yeah, it's a mouthful. One of the things you acknowledged, Lila, was that in goal area 2, objective 7, including all voices, it's a really neat objective. We should go read that on the impact team and be like, hey, when we're doing survey work, are we only reading survey responses from the people who got Dr. Ike's email and clicked this, or read the Westlake Weekly and clicked the form and filled it out? Because those people might be different than all voices. So yeah, it's a really, you kind of touched on that, you know, from an impact side. I'll move on, because I'll just talk, quite obviously. Cheney and then Hope.
I'm just excited about looking again at something that we share as an entire community, this strategic, just planning in a way that doesn't involve being, you know, polarized on two sides about masks or you know, anything. This last 2 years have been really hard as a community, as a school. And so it's really cool to see us, you know, come around this planning again. I think it will bring us together. I also think as we're moving forward in strategically planning, that it's important that we take data again. Like, I feel like after the last 2 years, like, where are we? There's that lens of trauma that we won't know unless we ask, you know, where are people at? And that might shift what we focus on too. Like, I obviously would love to jump into so many of these areas just to regain a sense of normalcy, right? But like, what are the key areas from all the players? And I also thinking about academics, like you brought up in governance a little bit about academics, and we need data around like what's going on academically, you know, from teachers, from our, you know, our norm tests, and then who do we need to support and who do we need to target very now, you know, and how are we going to do that to make sure that people aren't going to be even more behind, and that we don't have our strategic, like, groups of people even more behind than before, so that we don't lose anyone. I just think data collection at this point would be really, and to be honest, I don't know how we would do that, but I mean, just some really good questions around this, so we kind of know going in what we're dealing with, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, kind of what I alluded to during the slideshow was that, like, hey, we can't really go forward. Because whatever comes down from the governor, the governor is going to come out and tell us whether we can wear masks or not. But the governor is not going to come out and say, hey, you know what you need to do? You really need to collaborate with your community to make sure that all voices are heard. Like, the governor's not reading our strat plan. We need to do the survey work and be like, families, we're listening. But also, hey, teachers, Lila hit on it. If the staff members don't feel safe, supported, and get their needs filled, like, this whole thing doesn't work. So, like, every stakeholder group needs to be heard. I love it, Janie. I think we got to do some survey work for sure, and find out, you know. But I like just to echo, I like your thought that, like, because we've been so torn as a community and polarized around so many topics over the last 2 years, it'd be kind of nice to say, isn't this one thing we can all agree on? We all want our school to be engaging and safe and have our voices heard. And like, I don't know, this communal strat plan would be so cool. Hope Golick, bring us home.
Going last is a lot of fun. I really appreciate being put in this position. I'm half sarcastic, half actually okay. So I had been prepared to talk a lot, I think, about Goal Area 2, Objective 7, which is including all voices, and putting a spin on that in the sense that it's not only including those voices, but listening to those voices and making people feel heard as being part of it. I think sort of to Janie's point about sort of polarizing topics that we've been faced with, I think there has been a skill loss in the ability to have differing views and express those kindly and with respect. I also think that there's a real need to focus in on not just students and everybody, the entire community's social emotional readiness as we come back out of the pandemic. I know I've mentioned to you, John, that I'm reading Permission to Feel as a way to sort of how do we harness and redevelop those skills that allow us to use our emotional intelligence, right, and moving forward. And I feel like maybe that's something we could target is sort of learning those skills again, or at least understanding how people process emotions. The last one that kind of jumps out at me, again, just in this spot now, because we've had such a deep discussion really around SEL and collaboration in the community, is Goal Area 1, Objective 4, Open to Innovation. I feel like the last 2 years have pushed us to be innovative in different ways. And while it's been a real challenge, as we come out of it, maybe focusing on some of the positive things we may have learned and how we do communicate the ways. Like one instance is, we may be meeting in person, but we're innovating to make sure we include available technology so that more people can participate in that. And so I think that it might behoove us to take a little bit of time to see, are there any innovations that we can bring forward into future school years that this pandemic, for better or for worse, has forced us to learn.
Yeah, it's interesting to take Open to Innovation from Goal Area 1, Objective 4, and marry it to Goal Area 3, Objective 1, which is blueprinting our practices. If we've decided that we should always have video conferences available for parent-teacher conference week, then blueprint that up over here in the blueprint area so that we always have it in our pieces.
I know that as a board, even from our own parent members, we've heard how helpful it was to have those conferences virtually and the ability to attend from work. And it took a stressor off of families trying to, schedule them at the same time and to make the trip home and take time off of work. And so is it in turn also, using that innovation to address some of maybe our access issues and sort of accessing what the school has to offer?
So the floor is open. The workshop's not ending tonight, right? What we'll do is we'll go and start asking similar questions of community and our other stakeholder groups, and we'll be working on this kind of conversation going forward through the end of the year. But the floor is open right now. Is there something that didn't get said that should have been said? Is there something that's missing from the plan that should be included? Does someone have a way to synthesize something, 2 points they heard tonight that they could tie it together and kind of in a thought that connect the dots? Anything to offer?
I just wish I could really say, John, I thought in governance anyway, you did such a quick 3-word summary, and I think it still applies, but for the life of me, I cannot. You know how you say the sentence the first time and you really wish someone had written it down because it was never going to come out the same way? That's where I'm at with what you said. But
luckily we recorded governance. I'll go back and hear what it was.
Sean, you're laughing, but do you agree that still fits? You do. It still fits sort of the summary of what we heard from the full board. So sorry, fellow board members, I can't come up with it right now,
Yeah,
but it just really fits.
it is interesting. I mean, I won't recapture what happened in governance, obviously, but I feel like listening to the board, what's interesting to me is the goal area 3 academic readiness, which I think is the kind of like the traditional singular purpose of school is to make sure our students are academically prepared so they have all the skills that they need to go off into college and career and be successful. I think these other areas, goal areas 1, 2, 4, and 5, have been developed by us to say that, hey, while academic pursuit is kind of where we're heading, it takes all these other things to really propel our students academically. And what I hear what he's saying is like, yes, academics is obviously important. However, if we don't reconnect our community and focus on community connectedness and regaining that ability to collaborate and work together, we're not going to propel our students the way we always traditionally have. So I'll do some noodling on this. I'm trying to summarize where I think I heard. I'll watch this recording and watch the governance recording and see if I can create some synthesis, and also do the same with staff and families going forward. Anything else to add to the conversation, team?
John, I think I just add on to what you just said in the fact that I know I always have academic readiness in the back of my brain as being the primary. I mean, I do, it's there. But I think we all know that, like, brilliant, smart kid that, can't find someone to sit with at lunch or doesn't know how to say how they're feeling. And then we send them to college without being prepared, or into a boardroom without the emotional intelligence. It's still a struggle. So it's funny. I think it's just that part of it, I guess I don't bring it up, is because I assume we're doing a good job at goal area 3. And I shouldn't do that because I know assuming is bad. But there is that sort of underlying comfort that I have that Westlake is doing everything it can to make sure students are academically ready.
Yeah, in the actual objectives of goal area 3, we're actually doing it really strong. I mean, with our academic philosophy and objective 2, personalizing for students. I mean, you look at Lila MacGyver on the screen right now. Personalizing for students at the high school in so many different ways. All of our staff doing that, and then working academics or supporting academics through MTSS. Like, we have more students on our multi-tier systems of supports caseload than we ever had prior to the pandemic. We're intervening and offering support and intervention at higher levels than we ever have before. So, one of the things we worry about is the achievement gap. And one of the things we talked about at the last meeting was, what kind of data do we have to say, okay, did everyone take some learning loss? Possibly. But do we know, did any particular groups have more loss than other groups? And is that gap actually become exacerbated? Well, we certainly have MTSS data that says a lot of kids are getting more academic support now than they ever had in the past. So we know that we are responding, utilizing the objectives right there in goal area 3. So we're doing the work, but there may be more work to be done than has ever been done in the past. And one of the things that I bring up publicly is that the CASP testing is coming back this year, right? And we will have our data on a dashboard again this year. And people will start talking about color codes this year. And people think that we measure what matters. And there's not a lot of great measurements around SEL. And we all seem to think that matters. And we all here on this screen seem to think that community connectedness matters. But it's hard to measure. But the state's great at measuring standardized academic outcomes. And those are going to be on a dashboard somewhere soon. And part of our promise to our authorizer is that we're going to be competitive in that area. And so there's the driver that becomes the, we're all chasing this test score. So we'll report back and we'll continue working on this. If there's nothing else to add on this, we'll dive out of it. Everybody okay with that? Very cool. Thanks, team. I appreciate the feedback. I look forward to what comes out of it. I love this crowdsourcing process. The next topic, I think, Hope, goes back to you.
Before we do that, John, can you just make sure that we don't have any public comment?
Yeah, I checked a minute ago. Let me check right quick here. Seeing none.
Okay. So item B, Executive Director Evaluation Process launch. This is really just a moment for me just to let you know that shortly you'll be receiving the evaluation form. It's going to be the same Google form that we had used 1 or 2 times in the past. We did not do it in 2021, just with everything else going on. I'm sorry, it kind of fell off the radar. This year we're doing it now in the hopes of going into closed session at the March meeting. John's agreement sets out that we need to let them know what our plan of action is by March 15th for the next school year. And so while we don't anticipate any changes, it is the board's chance to talk about that. And so I would expect it to go out next week, and then we'll want it back about a week before the board meeting. I'll go through it, summarize it. I pull off, it is anonymous, but if there's any data at all that could be linked to somebody, I pull it off. And then I will present it to you at the March meeting, and then we can sort of plan on next steps there. When we discussed it in governance, we did talk with John. He typically does a self-evaluation as part of this process, or at least summarizes how his goals went, but also in 2021 that was less clear due to COVID. And so it may be more of a discussion this year about what the goals will look like going into 22-23. So there's going to be just some room in the process to do the best we can, just given, again, everything that we've faced over the last 2 years. So John, did you have anything you wanted to add to that kickoff?
No, I just want to say thanks. I asked that this item get placed on here in part because it was on the February agenda 2 years ago or 3 years ago, when I always look back at old agendas to see where we are. And I thought, oh yes, I like that that's on there because it makes a transparent and public opportunity for our public to see, oh, I do get evaluated by our board. And if anybody has feedback that you should know about, then this is that opportunity. But also, if you want me to reflect on anything prior to my evaluation, feel free to reach out to me. Hey, John, I'm engaging your evaluation. Could you write me a little paragraph about how you perceive growth in this area of our school? If you have that for me, I work for you. I would love to be able to reflect in a meaningful way so that you have information from me so that you can evaluate the work I do. So I look forward to the process. I enjoy it. I'm glad it's on here. So thanks, Hope.
Oh, no problem. So more to come on that one. I am going to, would you just check for, I don't anticipate public comment, but we're supposed to do it after every item. Was there anything on that one?
Seeing no public comment.
Okay. I'm going to rearrange the agenda a bit, just so we do not have to come back to open session out of closed session. So in terms of future agenda items, I believe we have a few, first interim coming up in March. Finance, like I was mentioned earlier, hopes to potentially have a certificated comp proposal on the agenda in March. A Public Records Act policy update will hopefully be on in March, as well as I just mentioned a closed session for the purposes of executive director evaluation. So we'll try to keep the March meeting moving pretty quickly, but we do have a number of items that we anticipate being on that agenda. With that, that brings us to reflection, which is our time to share something that worked well or something that would have been better if. I'm gonna go ahead and do it in a whip around just based on the order of the pictures on my screen. So Sean, if you wouldn't mind going first, and then Michelle, and then Josh.
I enjoyed the discussion around the strat plan. I was a little worried that it would be duplicative of governance and that it might be a little bit of a sleepy time, but it wasn't. It was really good. And although some of the same points were made, people were able to riff off it and we got different views on it. So it was really good.
Thanks, Sean. Michelle, Josh, and then Shannon.
I like how John makes it easy for us. He packages it and presents it in a way that it's easy to just have the discussion. So I appreciate the background work that goes into it.
Josh, Shannon, Lila?
I really like the data that was presented in the form it was presented in. It's really easy for me to kind of take a look at it and say, where should we put more focus? Where, do we have a little too much focus? And maybe that's the wrong words, but just kind of looking at it, it's a cool way to kind of evaluate how it's going. And I really like that.
You're on mute, but I think I'm next. I kind of ditto everything everyone has said. I really appreciate the conversation around the strat plan and being able to put it, into the through, or look at it through the lens of COVID, but still through the lens of like, okay, these goals and these strategies still apply. We just need to maybe make some tweaks and figure out how we can bring these same goals and principles with us as we're navigating this like wildly different landscape than when we wrote the strategic plan.
Thanks, Shannon. I figured it out this time. Lila, then Jamie.
Same with the strategic plan. I will just say I appreciate that we even have a strategic plan. Every time I read it as like an employee, as a teacher here, I'm like, this is really good stuff. And the opportunity to like look at it and reflect it is just great.
Jamie?
Now I know what you meant, Hope, of going last. It's so fun. Everyone said all the things, but I agree with Josh about the data. Like, John, you were talking about your friend telling data stories. Like, you could do that job as well. Like, you do such a great job of kind of crafting everything so it's easy for us to analyze, and I appreciate that. And then ditto Lila about the fact that having this strategic plan to ground us, especially in this time of just crazy business right now in the last 2 years, it's so nice that we have something that grounds us. Like, we have things in place like the strategic plan to keep us going when it's really hard. So I love that.
Let's see. For me, one thing I would like to, it didn't come up here and it came up, I discussed it briefly at governance, is if you all would go back and look at the crowdsource information and then realize that the question was, where do you see us in 22, 23? And realize that's exactly the year we're talking about. It's an interesting reflection point to sort of look at it and see, are we where we thought we were going to be? Did we expect there to be something different? But because this was a 5-year strategic plan, or at least the initial term was 5 years, we are coming up on that. And so it's an interesting time capsule as we move forward in these discussions. I think I may have celebrated this here once already, but it does tie in to the idea that John does a really good job of framing our discussions. But I think both John and Steve do that for us every meeting, where as much as I may crack jokes, particularly at Steve's expense, and I apologize for that, for the number of words on slides, they do give us the proper sort of framing for the issues we're discussing, as well as for people who are watching, to know sort of what the thought process, what is going into it and how we got here. And I think that on reflection, I can't say thank you for that enough, because it really helps make sure that the community at least has a sense of why right? Why we're here and where we're headed. And so I just want to thank them both for that. John, Amy, Steve, would you like to reflect? You don't have, I mean, I'm sure you do, John. Steve, Amy?
I always like when John's little unique words come out of other people's mouths. And so to hear Sean Berman say it was fun to riff on, and you might not have noticed, but I kind of got a little giggle and I smiled because it's fun to hear him rub off on Sean.
I love
tonight.
A good riff, man. I love a good riff.
Love a good riff.
I do feel that way when Josh says sprinkle. I mean,
and pot roast now.
Mm-hmm. Steve?
I would give a shout out just to the format and the whip around, right? It's an easy concept, right? But like everyone has an opportunity to like pitch a thought in, pause if they need to reflect a little bit more. So, I mean, that simple construct by itself is just really valuable, and I'm glad it was used tonight.
Cool. Hope, can I riff?
I guess so.
Cool. So I just want to acknowledge, the reflection is about something that works and helps our organization or helps this board meeting work. We have how many people on here? 8 with Jed. There's 9 of us on screen or whatever. How many people? There's 8 or 9 adults here who are all interdisciplinary. Every one of us comes from a different field, or for those of on the edu side of the house, we all come from different sides of the edu side of the house, right? Janie's in middle school, Lila's at the high school, Steve's in the business office, A-dubs and D. Like, This is an interdisciplinary group that feels very safe. Everyone shared tonight. Everyone expressed something that they weren't even totally sure what they were wanting to say, but you felt safe enough to say it and understand that the room would accept what you said and help you shape what you meant on YouTube. You're all streaming live through the World Wide Web, and not a one of you was like, I can't. That's an amazing reflection. This group is an incredible group of adults that are like empowered to like dig deep and share and work outside of your comfort zone, and you do it all because you trust each other. That to me, that reflection is like a real kudos to this board. Good on you. We should stay on YouTube forever. I love it.
Well, hopefully we will be, right? That's the plan.
Sure.
So with that, we will go ahead and adjourn into closed session for with our real property negotiators. We don't anticipate any report out of closed session, so there's no need to hang out on the YouTube watching or anything. We'll go ahead and end that broadcast. We will be meeting again on March 10th, and more information on what that will look like will be coming shortly. So I will go ahead and adjourn the open portion of our meeting at 8:18.
Okay, I'm hitting stop on the YouTubes.